Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Coelho. I'm the president of Advice Chaser. I'm here with Sean Woods from Exclusive Insurance Brokerage, and he's here to tell me a little bit about what he knows about the Washington Long-Term Care Trust Act. Before we begin, I would like to do a little bit of legal housekeeping here. Thank you for watching this presentation. Please be aware that Advice Chaser, the host of this webinar, is not a registered investment advisor. Advice Chaser cannot and does not give financial advice. This recording is for educational purposes only and cannot be considered advice for any person's individual situation. Advice Chaser regularly hosts informative webinars similar to this, featuring a variety of knowledgeable professionals, many of whom are licensed advisors. Any opinions, ideas, or principles expressed by presenters are their own, and however true or interesting, are not endorsed by Advice Chaser. Please do not act on the information in this recording without consulting a qualified financial professional. Our thanks to the many subject matter experts who generously give of their time to make this material accessible to our followers. Thanks for that. So I'm going to introduce Sean a little bit, tell you a little bit about his knowledge on this and his career. Sean joined Exclusive Insurance Brokerage in 2014 after graduating from the University of Redlands in 2013 with a Bachelor of Science in Government. He is life and health insurance licensed. He works strategically with independent financial advisors, insurance producers, and estate planning attorneys as a life and long-term care consultant. He specializes in designing creative solutions within the retirement, business, and estate planning space. He also specializes in advanced case design, product proposals, and policy review, and is based in Seattle, Washington. So, Sean, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate your time and sharing your expertise with us. Can you give us a bit of an introduction to the Act, how it came about, and what the purpose is?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for having me. So, the passage of the Long-Term Care Trust Act makes Washington the first state in the nation to create a publicly funded insurance program that will provide working residents of Washington an opportunity to vest into a basic level of LTC benefits. The program will be funded by Washington workers who will pay a tax through payroll deductions. The program will become effective, and those payroll deductions will begin January 1st, 2022. And just as a preface to the rest of this kind of interview, this information is just intended for a summation of the Washington Long-Term Care Trust Act, and of course is in no way a complete description.
Yeah, it's interesting because it seems like there's a lot of information out there about this, and none of it is very firm. It seems like there are a lot of moving parts and nobody's exactly sure how they're going to work together.
Yeah, and that's kind of been the difficulty we've been running into, is trying to keep up. I've been trying to keep an arm's distance from politics, and somehow, I'm involved in insurance and now I'm following up on politics, but with legislation, it's almost like it's changing on a daily basis. A lot to keep up on, a lot of changes, a lot of amendments, which we'll get into here in a minute.
Yeah.
But certainly nothing set in stone, nothing concrete yet. But we do want to be proactive in talking to and educating and coaching clients on kind of what's out there, what's to come, and what they should be doing and expecting from a long-term care planning standpoint.
Got it. Yeah. Can you tell us a bit more about how the trust is funded, where the money comes from, and what happens if there's not enough?
Yeah, of course. So again, the long-term care trust is funded through a new payroll tax for every employee. And that tax is going to be 58 cents per $100 of income. Again, 0.58% of your annual income. And those taxes are going to be paid into a trust fund. That trust fund is going to be invested and then in turn distributed to vested qualified employees. The program will begin payroll deductions on January 1st, 2022. There is no cap on wages to be taxed. Unlike Social Security that's capped, it doesn't matter how much money you're making, you're still required to pay that 58 cents per $100 of income. So For example, an employee that's making $100,000 a year, that employee is going to be taxed $580 a year. An employee making $500,000 a year is going to be taxed at $2,900 a year, and so on and so forth. So that vesting schedule, to answer your question of what happens if it's not enough, it's my understanding that that vesting schedule is going to give the state plenty of time to collect, invest, and then thus reducing the risk of quote unquote running out of money, so to speak.
Got it. Got it. That makes sense. Do we know what kind of coverage will be included under this legislation and who will qualify to receive the benefits?
Yes. So for someone to qualify, or for a qualified individual to access those state benefits, the individual must need assistance with 3 of the 10 ADLs, or what we'd call activities of daily living. The ADLs mandated by the program include eating, toileting, cognitive impairment, bathing, dressing, transferring, mobility, medication management, personal hygiene, and body care. Another kind of requirement there is that the individual must also be living as a resident in the state of Washington at the time he or she is to go on claim. And so the way that the benefits work is that they're allocated in units of $100 with a maximum lifetime benefit of $36,500. And so I'll repeat that. The benefits are given in increments of $100 for a maximum lifetime benefit of $36,500. Those benefits can be used in a variety of ways, but I would consider all-encompassing. And what that means is it will cover home health care, adult daycare, a nursing home facility, home modifications, adaptive equipment or technology, home delivery meals. It really does satisfy or cover all expenses incurred during a long-term care stay. The issue is it's not very much money, which we'll get into here in a little bit. When we're talking about total cost of long-term care and the rising cost of what those expenses are going to look like, $36,500 at $100 a day is only 365 days. So that's 1 year of benefit when the average LTC claims anywhere from 2.5 to 3 years, sometimes 4 years, right?
Wow.
So while the money can be used for a variety of expenses, the amount of which each resident or former employee can access is not nearly enough.
Huh. Interesting. Tell us more about how that vesting works.
Sure.
What's involved in that?
So just simply being a resident of Washington or being a taxpayer, so to speak, doesn't qualify you. There is a vesting schedule there. So to be a qualified individual that can access benefits, that Washington resident or individual must be vested in the program. And what that means is you need to be employed and paying the premium tax for either 10 years without an interruption of 5 or more consecutive years, or 3 years within the last 6 years and have worked at least 500 hours during each of the 10 years. So a lot of ambiguity there, but to simplify, you need to be paying those taxes for at least 10 years.
So can you, I think I read that before and I didn't understand it. I mean, it just occurred to me as you're explaining that, like, what happens if you leave the workplace to raise kids? You can't have more than a 5-year gap, you said, in employment?
Correct. So 10 years without interruption, which is, that's pretty normal, without an interruption of 5 or more consecutive years.
Got it. Okay. So it just can't be like 2 years and then a year off and then 2 years.
Correct.
As long as you have a chunk of 10 years somewhere in there.
Yes.
Then you qualify.
Combined. Yes, ma'am.
Got it. Is there any type of coverage? So say you have a couple where the wife is staying home with children and the husband is working for 30 years. Is she covered under his vesting?
No, she is not. So it would be just on him because she's not considered that W-2 employee and she's not paying that payroll tax.
Got it. Interesting. What about people who are already disabled?
No, you don't qualify. And I know that there is some stipulations in there. They'll qualify for state benefits outside of the Long-Term Care Trust Act.
Got it.
But as it pertains specific to this LTC, they would not qualify.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. Does this apply to business owners and the self-employed, or is it only for those W-2 employees?
Good question. So the Washington LTC Trust Act impacts all W-2 employees and its business owners, dependent on whether it's an S Corp, a C Corp, an LLC, but all W-2 employees will automatically be impacted by this. However, it's optional for self-employed workers. So again, W-2 employees will automatically be included in the program, will be subject to paying that premium tax. Self-employed individuals will not be included unless they choose to elect that coverage. A self-employed individual includes a sole proprietor, independent contractor, a partner, or a joint venturer. So starting January 1st, 2022, a self-employed person can elect that coverage. However, the self-employed person who has elected that coverage will be subject to that same premium tax that the W-2 employee would have to pay in that program. So they have the flexibility of opting in or opting out, whereas W-2 employees are forced in unless they can qualify for opting out, which we'll get into in here in a little bit.
Got it. Interesting. And what happens if an employee moves out of state after contributing to this program for a decade or more?
Yeah, and that's...
Oh no, I apologize. Go ahead.
And that's been one of the biggest frustrations, just from what I've seen kind of with boots on the ground and talking to specific clients and advisors, is that a lot of clients will work their entire lives in a specific area and then decide to retire in Arizona or retire where there's less taxes, right? Nevada, wherever it might be. So unfortunately, even if vested, the individual must be a Washington resident at the time of claim. And those benefits are not transferable to other states. So there's not a whole lot of flexibility or what we'd call portability with the Washington LTC Trust Act.
Got it. So from what I understand, and I'm not an insurance person or a financial advisor or anything like that, but under Medicare, from what I understood, it was possible for the state to seize assets from the estate in order to pay for nursing home care for the for an elderly person. Is something similar expected here if the amount paid from the system doesn't cover the care that's needed, or are they just on their own, or how is that going to work?
That's a great question, and I wish I had a more specific answer for you. I will say, in the example that you provided, the state doesn't necessarily seize the assets. What happens typically is that the client just doesn't receive anything or any benefit from the state until they quote unquote spend down all of their available or countable assets. So again, there's no definitive answer to that quite yet. None has been released, but it's likely, and we can assume that yes, they would likely need to spend down their assets to qualify.
After that 36,000 or before?
After.
Got it. Interesting. Okay. Can you show us briefly how this system compares to private long-term care insurance?
Yeah. So,
do you want me to show you that slide?
Yes, please. If you could pull that slide up real quick. What I wanted to compare side by side was just a hypothetical, typical 45 male, 45 female couple, and look at and compare the Washington LTC plan versus what the private marketplace provides. And so you'll notice, again, a 45 male, 45 female married couple. We'll look at that first table here. In that far left column, you'll see the salary, assuming both of them are working, for a combined $300,000 in salary, $500,000 in income, or $1 million in income. That 58 cents per $100 is going to be reflected in that second column, the tax, So if you're clearing $300,000 a year between the two of them, they're going to be paying about $1,700 a year in taxes. Again, if we're looking at $500,000 between the two of them, they're going to be paying $2,900 in taxes, and $1 million of income is going to net a tax bill of $5,800 a year. Obviously, the more income that you make, the more you're going to be paying in taxes. Now, unfortunately, like I said or alluded to earlier, there is no cap to what that tax will look like. So if we're talking about, the affluent or the mass affluent, these taxes could go up significantly. But to simplify, what does the Washington LTC plan provide? Depending on what tax you pay, you're still netting that same monthly long-term care benefit at $100, we'll call it a day, times 30 days in a month, right? $3,000 a month for a total of 12 months or 1 year. Nets us a total LTC benefit, which you'll see in that fifth column, $36,500 total. That's, once you've exhausted that in your lifetime, it's out, it's done. And now that is for each husband and wife. Now, if we're talking about the private plan, again, using the same hypothetical 45 male, 45 female, same salary. And if we were to match that tax implication with the premium outlay, they're going to be forced to pay that tax regardless. What if we reallocated that money into a private plan and use that as our premium payment? That third column will give you the monthly benefit that premium would provide for the clients. So you'll notice for the clients that are clearing $300,000 a year, that provides a monthly benefit of $22.56 a month. And again, that's for each of them. So slightly below what the Washington LTC plan provides. However, the difference is, look at the difference between the duration of the two. So the Washington LTC plan provides a 12-month benefit duration or 1 year, while the private plan provides a 66-month benefit period, giving them a total LTC benefit of $148,000 versus $36,500 above. And there is a death benefit component attached to it, which again, not necessarily the primary reason why these folks are going to be buying a private plan, but it is nice knowing that if, they are a part of the 10% never needing care, talking about a husband and a wife, at least they're able to pass wealth to generation 2 or leave some form of legacy. They didn't pay into a plan and receive none of those benefits. And then of course, the further down we go, the more premium that's being paid, the higher the monthly benefit, right? Mm-hmm. $2,900 a year, we're looking at about a $4,000 a month benefit with a total LTC benefit pool of about $263. And then we go one notch down to the $1 million salary, $5,800 a year in premium buys us a monthly benefit of $7,900 and a total LTC benefit pool of $526. So it's a no-brainer as far as replacing and opting out of a Washington LTC plan versus a private plan. And I will say these are not cookie cutter type kind of plans. They are incredibly customizable. It really is dependent on the client's overall asset makeup, their funding strategy, their income. There's a lot of variables that we need to take into consideration when building out these plans. Just for the sake of conversation and comparing apples to apples versus what Washington's state plan will provide versus a private plan, you'll notice the difference in not only the total LTC benefit, but the death benefit as well, and the duration for which you'll receive benefits.
Got it. Excuse my ignorance, but what happens if you only need 12 months of long-term care from a private plan? Do you just get that 12 months and then?
Great question.
If you die, then there's nothing, or how does that work?
Yeah. So assuming you're only on claim for 12 months, the average LTC stays anywhere from 2.5 to 3 years, depending on if you're a male or a female. But assuming that you go on claim for 12 months and pass away, you're going to accelerate this death benefit dollar for dollar in that right-hand column. And whatever's remaining or whatever is left, if you don't use the full amount, you're able to pass to generation 2. Leave as a legacy to the kids, to the grandkids, to your favorite charity, whatever the case might be.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. I'm getting quite the education on this.
I'm here for it.
Thank you. Um, let's see. So from what I understood, it's possible for those W-2 employees to opt out of this program under certain circumstances. Can you explain what we know about that and what we don't know about it yet?
Yes. So this is an area that has kind of flip-flopped over the last couple of months since legislation has been passed and since the legislation has been, I guess, adopted. But for an employee or a W-2 employee to opt out of this program, they need to attest that they have quote unquote long-term care insurance. They once they can attest to that, they have the option to apply for an exemption from the premium tax. Now, there's a bit of ambiguity, which I'll get into here in a second, with long-term care insurance. But when talking about the ambiguity, just this past weekend, an amendment was adopted on the bill that sets the deadline for the purchase of a private LTC insurance plan before 11/1/2021. Now, this deadline has moved a handful of times. Just a week ago, we were under the assumption that it was a July deadline. Now it's been pushed out to November. This, of course, still needs to be passed by the House, the Senate, and signed off by the governor, but we can assume it'll pass without issue. That being said, some important considerations for opting out of this program are ensuring that the private plan that the clients do decide to move forward with satisfy the state's definition of a true long-term care insurance policy. There's a lot of different products. There's a lot of different riders out there: chronic illness, critical illness, terminal illness, accelerated access solution riders, chronic illness plus riders. There's thousands of different combinations and products and designs. It's important that the client is fully aware and can definitively provide proof that their coverage that they have is in fact a true long-term care insurance policy, which, working with any of your specific financial advisors or someone like myself, can either say yes it is or no it is not. So again, that long-term care insurance private plan needs to have an effective date should the client want to opt out prior to 11/1/2021. That is the deadline as of today. So that being said, there's not a whole lot of time to make that decision. It's always my recommendation to explore your options, see what's out there, start the process before it's too late. Start the process sooner rather than later.
Yeah, interesting. Well, Sean, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this with me. I have been really curious about what's going on with this legislation as I've heard about it from various financial advisors in the Washington state area. So I appreciate you telling me what you know and educating me a little bit on what long-term care is and how it fits with this legislation. So
yeah, no problem. Exciting times. Again, like I started this interview, Washington's the first state to kind of implement this sort of LTC insurance statewide run plan, but I would imagine other states are going to follow suit. Don't hold me to it, but Washington kind of being the guinea pig, they're going to see how it pans out. But again, I think several other states will be soon to follow with something very similar.
It will be interesting to see what shakes out.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Thanks for your time, Sean.
Thank you. Thanks
appreciate you doing this for me. All right. Bye.
Bye.
You too.